4:30 a.m., May 11th, 2021. A desperate emergency call comes into Athens police. The voice on the other end is barely human, muffled, panicked, breaking through what sounds like duct tape. "Help! Robbers came in. They killed my wife." When police arrive at the upscale home in Glycanera, what they find is a scene from hell. The house has been ransacked. Jewelry scattered everywhere. An empty Monopoly box where 10,000 euros in cash used to be hidden. And hanging from the staircase by her own leash, a strangled husky puppy. In the bedroom, they discover 20-year-old Caroline Crouch lying face down on the bed, dead. Next to her body, their 11-month-old baby daughter is crying and pushing her mother's lifeless body, trying to wake her up. On the floor, bound with rope and duct tape, is Caroline's husband Bobish Anagnostopoulos. He's barely conscious, traumatized, and tells police an incredible story about 3 armed men who broke into their home, tortured them for money, and murdered his wife in cold blood. It's a horrific crime that will shock Greece and captivate the world. But what police don't know yet is that they're looking at one of the most elaborate criminal deceptions in modern history. Because the man they're treating as a victim is actually the killer. Caroline Crouch wasn't supposed to die that night. She was supposed to escape. Born to British parents David Crouch and Susan Delacosta in 2001, Caroline had grown up on the stunning Greek island of Alonissos. Her family moved there when she was 8, drawn by the crystal-clear waters and peaceful lifestyle. Caroline thrived in this environment. She became an accomplished swimmer, a skilled scuba diver, and surprisingly, earned a black belt in kickboxing. This wasn't just some sheltered island girl. Caroline was strong, independent, and had dreams of studying in Athens. She was fierce when she needed to be. But in 2017, during a Good Friday parade, her life took a dramatic turn. She was just 15 when she first spotted him, Bobish Anagnostopoulos, a 27-year-old helicopter pilot who made grand gestures that seemed pulled from a romance novel. He would fly his helicopter over her school, a move so dramatic it left Caroline and her classmates mesmerized. To a teenager, he seemed perfect. Successful, charming, financially stable. He wasn't just any pilot. He was well-connected, confident, and completely focused on winning her over. By 2019, just 3 days after Caroline turned 18, they eloped to Portugal. No traditional Greek wedding with extended family and friends, just a quiet ceremony that seemed romantic at the time. Looking back, it was the first warning sign. Their social media told the story of a perfect couple. Luxury dinners, romantic getaways, declarations of eternal love. Caroline seemed genuinely happy, and Bobish played the role of devoted husband flawlessly. When their daughter Lydia was born in 2020, they looked like the ideal young family. But behind the Instagram posts and public appearances, a very different story was unfolding. May 10th, 2021. Caroline and Bobish had been fighting all day, exchanging heated text messages even while in the same house. As their baby daughter slept nearby, the argument reached a breaking point. Caroline had made her decision. She was leaving and taking their daughter with her. What happened next would be disputed by only one person, because Caroline would never be able to tell her side of the story. When investigators interviewed Bobish at the hospital, still traumatized and barely coherent, he told them an incredible story. 3 armed men had broken into their home through a basement window around 4:30 a.m. They spoke with Greek and Albanian accents. They were looking for money. They knew the couple kept cash in the house. When they found the 10,000 euros hidden in a Monopoly box, it wasn't enough. They wanted more. The intruders tied him up with rope and duct tape, blindfolded him.
If you're enjoying this story, kindly do us a favor and subscribe to our channel. It is free and won't cost anything, but it means the world to us. We're just a small channel trying to grow. Thank you, and back to the video.
When Caroline tried to protect their baby daughter, they became violent. One of them pressed a pillow against her face until she stopped breathing. They killed the family dog too, maybe to send a message, maybe just because they were sadistic. They ransacked the house looking for more valuables, took jewelry worth 20,000 euros, then left, assuming Bobish was dead from the rope around his neck. It took him 30 minutes to work his way to his phone and call for help using his nose. The story was detailed, consistent, and absolutely heartbreaking. Babish provided descriptions of the attackers, even helped create a police sketch. He seemed like the perfect victim, traumatized, cooperative, desperate for justice. But perfect victims sometimes aren't victims at all. Detective Chief Inspector Theodoros Chronopoulos had seen a lot of crime scenes in his 20-year career, but this one haunted him. The level of violence, the senseless murder of a young mother, the traumatized baby. It was the kind of case that kept investigators awake at night. The crime scene told a story of professional criminals who knew what they were looking for. They had bypassed expensive electronics and gone straight for cash and jewelry, the kind of items that couldn't be traced. The basement window entry point suggested they had surveillanced the property beforehand. But some details didn't sit right with the experienced detective. The intruders supposedly knew about the money hidden in the Monopoly box, an unusual hiding place that suggested inside knowledge. Yet they had left behind other valuables that were in plain sight. The level of violence seemed excessive for a simple robbery gone wrong. Still, the physical evidence supported Babish's story. He had clear injuries consistent with being bound and restrained. The house was genuinely ransacked. And his emotional reaction seemed authentic. He broke down multiple times during questioning, begging police to find his wife's killers. Police began canvassing the neighborhood for witnesses and checking security cameras from nearby businesses. They found footage of a dark-colored vehicle and motorcycle circling the area on the morning of the murder, exactly what you'd expect from criminals conducting surveillance. The investigation expanded rapidly. They compiled a list of known criminals operating in the Athens area, focusing on those with a history of violent home invasions. The Albanian connection that Babish mentioned led them to examine organized crime groups with ties to that region. Meanwhile, Caroline was laid to rest on Alonissos, the island where she'd grown up. Babish delivered an emotional eulogy that left not a dry eye in attendance. "I was lucky to meet Caroline," he said through tears. "Lucky that she loved me, and even more lucky that she was the mother of my daughter." The grieving widower's performance was so convincing that even seasoned investigators felt sympathy for him. 3 days after Caroline's funeral, police got their first major break. A routine traffic stop in northern Greece led to the arrest of 36-year-old Georgi Haridjisvili, a Georgian national attempting to cross into Bulgaria with a fake passport. Haridjisvili was a career criminal with an extensive record. Over the past 6 months, he had been wanted in connection with 12 violent break-ins across Athens. 3 of these crimes had occurred in the same neighborhood as the Anagnostopoulos home, using similar methods: basement window entry, violence against female victims, theft of cash and jewelry. Even more compelling, Haridjisvili bore a striking resemblance to the police sketch created from Babish's description. Same build, same facial features, same general appearance. It seemed too perfect to be a coincidence. For the investigators, everything clicked into place. Here was a violent criminal with the right background, the right methods, and the right appearance. He was even trying to flee the country, which suggested consciousness of guilt. They arrested Haridjisvili and began 4 days of intensive interrogation. The questioning was aggressive. This was a high-profile case with immense public pressure for results. They were convinced they had their man. But Haridjisvili maintained his innocence throughout the grueling sessions. He admitted to his other crimes readily enough, but insisted he had never heard of Caroline Crouch or Babish Anagnostopoulos. His alibi for the night of the murder was weak, but couldn't be completely disproven. After 4 days of interrogation that left him concussed from the physical pressure applied, investigators had to face an uncomfortable truth: they had the wrong man. Haridjisvili was cleared of involvement in Caroline's murder and released. The case had hit its first major dead end. 3 police officers were demoted from the Athens homicide squad for the overzealous interrogation tactics. Public confidence in the investigation began to waver. Weeks passed with no new leads. Police expanded their investigation to include 100 potential suspects from organized crime networks, eventually narrowing the list to 10 individuals on the red list, Greece's most wanted violent criminals. They showed mugshots to Babish, hoping he might recognize one of the faces, but he couldn't identify any of the suspects. The lack of physical evidence was becoming a major obstacle. No fingerprints, no DNA, no witnesses who had seen anything suspicious beyond the vehicles captured on distant security cameras. The case began to attract international attention, but not in a way that helped the investigation. Media coverage focused on the apparent randomness of the crime and the failure of police to solve it. Athens residents, already dealing with increased crime rates, began to feel unsafe in their own homes. A substantial reward was offered for information leading to the arrest of Caroline's killers, but it went unclaimed. Tips flooded in from the public, but they led nowhere. The investigation was consuming enormous resources with no results to show for it. Meanwhile, Babish continued to play his role perfectly. He gave interviews to major news outlets, pleading for information about his wife's killers. He was active on social media, thanking supporters, and keeping Caroline's case in the public eye. He cooperated fully with police, submitting to multiple interviews, and even offering to undergo polygraph testing. To everyone watching, he seemed like a man consumed with grief and desperate for justice. His performance was so convincing that even experienced homicide detectives began to view him more as a valuable witness than a potential suspect. But investigators like Detective Chronopoulos couldn't shake the feeling that something was off about the case. The crime scene was almost too perfect, the story almost too detailed. In his experience, real crimes were messier, more chaotic. This felt staged. Still, without concrete evidence pointing in another direction, the case remained focused on finding the mysterious intruders that Babish had described. The breakthrough came not from traditional detective work, but from technology that Babish didn't even know was watching him. Digital forensics expert Maria Vasiliou had been analyzing every piece of electronic evidence from the crime scene when she noticed something that didn't match Babish's timeline. The security camera's memory card had been removed at 1:20 a.m., more than 3 hours before the supposed break-in occurred. This single detail opened up an entirely new line of investigation. If the memory card was removed hours before the intruders arrived, how did they know to remove it? And why would they bother, if they were planning to kill everyone in the house
If you're
anyway?
enjoying this story, kindly do us a favor and subscribe to our channel. It is free and won't cost anything, but it means the world to us. We're just a small channel trying to grow. Thank you, and back to the video.
The team began examining other digital evidence with fresh eyes. Caroline had been wearing a fitness smartwatch that monitored her heart rate continuously. The data told a chilling story that directly contradicted Babish's account. At 3:58 a.m., Caroline's heart rate showed she was in deep sleep, around 60 beats per minute. At 4:05 a.m., it suddenly spiked to over 90 beats per minute, indicating severe physical and mental stress. At 4:11 a.m., her heart stopped completely. This was 19 minutes before Babish claimed the intruders had even arrived at their home. Even more damaging was the data from Babish's own fitness tracker. During the time he claimed to be bound and unconscious, the device showed clear movement patterns consistent with someone walking around the house and performing various tasks. Phone records revealed another disturbing detail. Caroline had spent the evening of May 10th researching hotels where she could stay with her baby daughter. Text messages to friends indicated she was planning to leave Babish and was afraid of his reaction. When investigators attempted to recreate Babish's claim that he had dialed emergency services with his nose while bound, they found it was physically impossible given the way he described being restrained. The neighbors, when re-interviewed more carefully, confirmed they had heard no sounds of a violent break-in that night. The only noise was a dog in distress, which would be consistent with Roxy being killed, but not with the elaborate home invasion Babish described. For Detective Chronopoulos, the pieces finally fell into place. They weren't looking for 3 Albanian criminals. They were looking at one Greek pilot who had committed the perfect murder, or so he thought. June 17, 2021, 37 days after Caroline's murder. Babish was attending a memorial service for his wife on the island of Alanissos, surrounded by family and friends who still saw him as a grieving widower. Detective Chronopoulos and his team had been waiting for this moment. They approached Babish discreetly after the service ended, away from the mourners and media attention. "We have new information about Caroline's case," Chronopoulos told him. "We need you to come to Athens to identify a suspect." But there was no suspect waiting in Athens. This was the moment they would confront Babish with the mountain of digital evidence that proved he had been lying for over a month. The interrogation room at Athens police headquarters became the setting for one of the most dramatic confrontations in Greek criminal history. For 8 hours, investigators systematically dismantled every aspect of Babish's story. They showed him the smartwatch data proving Caroline died before his claimed timeline. They presented the fitness tracker evidence showing he was moving around during the supposed attack. They explained how the security camera memory card had been removed hours too early. They confronted him with Caroline's internet searches and text messages showing she was planning to leave him. They demonstrated how his claimed method of calling for help was physically impossible. With each piece of evidence, Babish's composure began to crack. The confident, grieving husband slowly transformed into a cornered, desperate man. His lawyers tried to intervene, but the evidence was overwhelming and irrefutable. Finally, after 8 hours of maintaining his innocence in the face of undeniable proof, Babish Anagностopoulos broke down completely. "I did it," he whispered, his head in his hands. "I killed Caroline." But even in confession, he couldn't tell the complete truth. Even while admitting to murder, Babish continued to manipulate and deceive. His confession was carefully crafted to minimize his responsibility and shift blame to his victim. He claimed Caroline had been the aggressor that night. She had threatened to leave with their daughter, he said. She had become physically violent, pushing and hitting him. He portrayed himself as a man who had simply lost control in the heat of the moment. The reality, as investigators would later piece together, was far more calculated and sinister. On the night of May 10th, Caroline had indeed told Babish she was leaving him. She had been planning her escape for weeks, researching safe places to stay, confiding in friends about her fear of his reaction. She knew he would never voluntarily let her go. The argument escalated around 4:05 a.m. when Caroline made it clear there was no changing her mind. But Babish's response wasn't a moment of lost control. It was a deliberate decision to eliminate the threat to his control. He strangled Caroline with his bare hands, then pressed a pillow against her face with his full body weight. She fought for her life for nearly 6 minutes, as her smartwatch recorded her final heartbeats. But the most chilling part came after the murder. Babish didn't panic or flee. Instead, he spent hours meticulously staging one of the most elaborate fake crime scenes in criminal history. He killed their family dog Roxy, hanging her from the staircase to make the scene look more violent. He placed their crying baby daughter next to Caroline's corpse. He ransacked his own home, making sure to leave the Monopoly box open to support his story about hidden cash. Then he tied himself up with rope and duct tape, positioning his body to look like he had been attacked. He lay there for hours, listening to his daughter cry next to her dead mother, waiting for what he determined was the right time to discover the crime and call for help. When he finally called emergency services, his performance was Oscar-worthy. The muffled voice, the apparent panic, the desperate pleas for help. All of it was carefully calculated to sell his story. For 37 days, he maintained this deception flawlessly. He grieved publicly, cooperated with police, pleaded for justice on television, and attended his wife's funeral as a heartbroken widower. He fooled investigators, fooled the media, and fooled an entire nation. In May 2022, Babish Anagностopoulos was sentenced to life in prison for the premeditated murder of Caroline Crouch, plus additional time for animal cruelty and perverting the course of justice. Today, he sits in Korydallos prison in Athens, still receiving love letters from women who have romanticized his story. He continues to appeal his sentence, showing no genuine remorse for destroying not just Caroline's life, but the future of their daughter who will grow up never knowing her mother. Caroline Crouch was just 20 years old when she died. She should have had decades ahead of her, watching her daughter grow up, pursuing her dreams, finding real happiness. Instead, she became the victim of a man who believed he owned her, who couldn't accept losing control, and who was willing to commit the ultimate betrayal to maintain his power. This case serves as a chilling reminder that domestic violence can hide behind any facade, that the most dangerous person in a woman's life is often the one who claims to love her most, and that sometimes the perfect husband is the one you should fear the most.